welcome to the Science Faction Podcast, where science meets fact meets fiction.
This is Science Faction for the week of February 9th, 2025. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Dominguez, and with me today, two individuals that have differing views on how important sports is today.
And Benjamin Daniel Lawless and I do not give a care about sports today. Is today a sport day?
Devon, would you like to respond?
Oh, today's the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really.
Perhaps
we're
not
gonna
as
go
differing
watch
as
it
you
at a
would
friend's
think.
house. I'm not really invested in either of the teams, so I don't really care what happens.
Who's even playing?
It's the
I'm sure I could
Eagles and the Chiefs.
Oh man.
See,
I'd
Ben,
love to see the Eagles play.
Hold on.
You know,
no,
they're a great band.
Shh. Quiet. Listen, Ben, you asked who was playing. There is no universe in this vast multiverse we live in that a Ben would know what Devon said and would understand it.
Well, if Devon mentioned any teams from California, I'd be like, oh yeah, good on them.
Oh, I guess you're right.
And I'd recognize them.
No, I don't think you would.
Probably.
Devon, say a California team. Let's see if Ben knows it. And Ben, don't just say, yes, I know it.
The Rams.
Don't know them.
All right, this is a podcast about science and science fiction.
Was that a real California team, Devon?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're LA.
You're not just messing with me. All right.
No, it's a thing.
Yeah, no, not a clue. Sorry, Rams fans. I apologize.
Yeah, the Rammer community is not going to be very happy with you.
Oh, the Ramheads?
The Ramheads. I think the Venn diagram with the Ramheads and the Science Faction listeners are two separate circles. Let's talk about some real life stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Last week, Devon made a joke about his music app having a blacksmithing feature, which was hilarious. Hilarious jokes. I did go to a blacksmithing class yesterday, guys.
What?
Awesome.
Yeah, I took hammer and anvil and heat, and I changed iron. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's what you sent the photo of.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent that picture, that weird twisted piece of metal, and I was like, I made this.
Yeah. Okay. I really lacked a lot of context there, and I believe I said your spoon is incomplete, Stephen, but it's cool nonetheless.
I mean, that could have been like you photoshopped that picture, you 3D printed that thing. Maybe you were talking about the car you were sitting in.
Yeah, I made that Volvo. I made that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good on you, Stephen.
Yeah. So I took this blacksmithing class, and it was I signed up for it. Actually, I asked ChatGPT for local blacksmithing classes, and I found it that way because search engines could not find it for me. So thank you, ChatGPT. You're welcome. Yeah, they say you're welcome now. Yeah, so I found it that way, signed up. Apparently I signed up late because I got the email for like what to do, how to dress, the safety. I had to like read a 12-page safety document like the day of. And then later when I met the instructor, he was like, oh yeah, I tried to send that stuff out like a week ahead of time, but you signed up late. I was like, oh, okay. And so I went to this thing, and he was like, oh, so you're not part of that group. I was like, what group? Oh, there was like 4 other guys that came as a group to just like bro out and learn blacksmithing. So that was kind of interesting so it was these 4 guys that knew each other and then me. But it was cool. The dude, the instructor, volunteered his time. Our payment went straight to the museum that this blacksmithing happened at. It was kind of interesting because there's a city museum, and then next to it was this giant warehouse in a big block letters just said blacksmith on it. And I was like, oh, I guess this is the place when I pulled up. And inside that warehouse was a small blacksmith shop, like that it had been built around. And that was a little a blacksmithing area, a forge from the early 1900s that the museum like bought the space and built the thing over it to preserve it, which is kind of cool. So we worked on some machinery and a place that where blacksmithing has been occurring for over 100 years, which was kind of fun. And then that twisted piece of metal that you guys saw was essentially like a bunch of different lessons rolled up into one piece of like different ways to change and forge the metal. Technically, if a cop came up, he would be like, "Oh, these are letter openers." That's the technical thing that we made, but it doesn't look like who has a letter opener anymore? What is that?
Why would a cop care? What's the...
Well, no, I'm just like, because if you walk out of there with that thing, I mean, it looks like a shiv or something. Like, that was the joke, is that it looks like a shiv or something. Like, and it's iron, so you could cause damage with it. It's just a cop joke. That's all. That's all that was.
Okay. I'm like, because I mean, you can buy a set of steak knives from the store and have them in your car. Like, I don't have to say, no, those are letter openers.
What do you mean?
Well,
can?
I mean, when Steven is stabbing somebody to death with his letter opener, the cop might have some questions of him.
Yeah. Why do you have a letter opener?
I get it. It was just a throwaway joke. It wasn't serious.
Yeah.
But it was serious, and that's why I was like, well, wait a minute. Why would a cop care? Like, are you allowed to have? You literally are allowed to walk around with a knife, aren't you? Is that against some law?
I mean, it's a weapon. I don't think you can just walk around with a knife. Can you?
I don't know why not.
Hey,
I mean, seriously, I don't know why
Internet,
not.
can we walk around with a knife?
I don't recommend it. I'm just saying that, like, in which... I mean, if you're brandishing it threateningly, and if you're causing a reasonable expectation of harm in somebody else, yes, I agree. That's wrong, and that's a crime. That's harassment or assault. But to literally hold a knife in public, like, anyway.
But, I mean, it depends. I guess it really depends on how you're holding it, because if you have a butcher's knife, or just a long, like, not just like a little, like, oh, I'm gonna cut my steak, but like a cooking knife. And you're holding it in one hand and walking around, that seems threatening just as an image. Like if I was walking down the street just holding a knife like that, I'm pretty sure if a cop drove by, they'd stop and be like, "What's going on, bro?" And I'd be like, "Why you call me bro?
It's none of your
pig?"
business. I'm a free American.
Yeah, and that'll work. That'll work. Well, I'm pretty white, so it probably would work. Anyways, so yeah,
they wouldn't stop you. You're white, but
yeah, exactly. Blacksmithing class was a whole lot of fun, and so now I have like a level 1 California Blacksmith Association. I'm a level 1, which means something. Actually, what it means is now I qualify for the level 2 class, and also next month there's like a blacksmithing tournament or something that's happening at that place, and it's like a blacksmithing tournament and chili cook-off. So that's the kind of place that we're in now as a society. So I can do that. I qualify for that now. I could go and compete, whatever it is. I guess cooking chili with blacksmithing equipment.
Are you gonna compete?
I don't know. I've thought about it. What I'm going to do is keep opening up my email and seeing what information they give me about it, because he was like, more information is going to come out later. So,
according to Google AI, and obviously with AI, take it with a grain of salt. And this is for California. You can carry a folding knife, a fixed blade knife, or utility knife, but it is restricted based on where you are, like a school or a municipal building. There are illegal knives, cane knives, air gauge knives, lipstick knives, belt buckle knives, pen knives, ballistic knives, shurikens, ninja stars, and throwing stars. Undetectable knives. And if you're going to carry a concealed knife, you do have to have a permit.
A concealed knife? Okay.
Yeah, if it's like under your, in your jacket.
Okay, sure.
Or like in your sock.
Sock knife.
Everybody remember sock knives?
Sock knife. Like, okay. All right. So, yeah, that was fun. What's going on in everyone else's life now that we've covered sock knives?
Life, death, life again.
What happened?
So, longtime co-hosts of the show may know that I that are my next door neighbor who I've been helping out with buying groceries on their behalf because they haven't been ambulatory for the last 6 years. They were in they passed
care.
away last
Yeah.
they were in hospice care and they passed away last Thursday. And so like a lot of that dealing with being supportive at the end of life and reflecting on just kind of that feeling or that kind of the understanding that when you're prepared to go, sometimes it may take years for reality to catch up with you. And that's kind of what happened with my next door neighbor, is that she kind of told me 6 years ago when she had a bad fall and really wasn't able to leave the house anymore. She's like, I'm going to die in this house. And used that, I think, as like a cloak to no longer like live and slowly wither away. Which does not sound pleasant to me.
No.
But I recognize that was her choice because it was her life, you know?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, I think sometimes you find out what you want and what you believe by observing the world around you and how things work out for other people. And I'm thankful for that gift of being able to see like, okay, well that's a perfectly valid way to go about things, to live without purpose and just wait patiently for the end, and then, deal with the discomfort and suffering.
Hold on. Aren't we supposed to rage against the dying of the light? What happened to that?
Well, see, supposed to is a very interesting question there, Stephen, because no, there is no supposed to about all this. All of that raging against the dying of the night is a choice. It's a sacred and blessed one, and it's one that you get to make on your own. So while I am not upset that Ronna lived or died the way that she had stubbornly decided to, and she made her plans and found ways to make that happen. It also just was an interesting. It really just kind of showed me like, oh, well, what do I want? Because here I am, like I get the chance to react to my experiences and figure out what I want out of that. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's been at. I haven't watched any Severance.
Okay, wow. Can we leave Depression Corner?
Just been over here, it's fine. It's just life.
Just life, man.
Right?
Nature is metal.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah.
And as my wife often reminds me, like, life doesn't care how you feel about it.
How often does she have to remind you that?
This is like a daily thing.
It's like a daily affirmation.
She's been saying lately.
Yeah. It's her daily affirmation. Wakes up, stretches, shakes you awake. Life doesn't care about your feelings.
Yeah. It's the same thing that like, that I remember people shouting at me whenever I would lose at Halo, and or at GoldenEye, back in the day.
Yeah.
Life doesn't care about your feelings. So that's why I write poetry.
Okay. Devon, we're not going back. We're not going to Poetry Corner this time. You got anything going on in your life, Devon? Anything at all? Fun? Happy that you could talk about? Devon, how silly are you on a scale of 1 to silly?
How silly am I? What was the scale?
1 to silly.
1 to silly. I don't know. I'm not feeling very silly. So 0.
0. 0 silly. Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Despite all his rage, he's not silly in this cage.
Last night
I
I went
guess
to a
I
friend's
kind of
house.
feel like I don't know. So I have like this foot pain. It's in my big toe. I don't know if I've talked about it before, but it makes me feel very old. So, just having joint pain. Like I'm going to a podiatrist in a couple weeks for it. It's something I've had on and off for like a year, so I'm finally going to a podiatrist for it.
Well, that's good. I'm
So-
glad you took that step.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You know, there's a stat out there that men live less than women, and they also go to the doctor less. Married men go more because their wives
Tell them to go.
well, they make the appointment for them. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Devin,
Interesting.
never get divorced, or you will just die.
So
That's
I'll
what
say, I mean,
get from
like that's an interesting stereotype that doesn't match my household, but it's similar, right? Like
Right.
Back when I was going through my acid reflux and GERD problems, yeah.
What is this
that was a lot of
podcast
fun.
turned into?
Old
We're old
man.
men complaining podcast.
Old men talking about big toe pain and GERD. Hello. One thing that she said to me after she said, well, life doesn't care about your feelings.
Yeah, after she says that.
She said, like, hey, listen, you've been going through these problems for a long time, and right now I'm telling you, you will get no more sympathy from me until you see a doctor. And I'm like, I want your pity. And that was a tremendous like encouragement to go, because I'm like, no, I want to be pitied.
I like how she looks you dead in the eye and says, "I will stop loving you unless you take care of yourself."
No.
No, that's
me.
the breakdown of
No,
what she said.
It was pitying me,
That's what she
right?
said because you have feelings, but we all know what she
Like,
meant.
I'm not going to feel bad for you anymore because you have the ability to address this. So
Yes.
on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like you're, that this is a problem. You know what the next step is, and you're an adult. You can take care of yourself, and I'd prefer you did. Right.
Mm-hmm. Or else.
Yeah.
There's
I'm sorry
a big
about your lack of
implied,
silliness.
a big implied or else at the end of everything your wife says. I appreciate that about her. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can fill that in. I don't need her to fill that in. It's okay.
I mean, we all know. We've all seen the looks she gives you.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's the best.
But I choose to live.
You choose
Right?
life.
I choose life. I choose pity. I choose connection. And I would choose blacksmithing too if I had the time. That's incredible. So
Yeah.
go to the doctor, join a blacksmith class.
Sure.
Find your silly.
Devin, how do we find your silly? How do we get you there? Because when you were here with us, you had some silly. Is that what are you missing us? Do we need to be in your life more?
I don't know.
That was a pregnant pause. Right
That
there.
was.
I think he has enough of us.
Let's give birth to that pause another time. All right, we've already 20 minutes in almost. Let's get to it here, everyone. This is a podcast about science and science fiction. We're going to talk about some sciencey things, some fictiony things. We've got book club coming up later, which I am excited to talk about. But let's get to the future or now.
Now.
What are you highlighting there? Oh, you turned it into a link.
I'm making your link a link.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're
Zelda. I'm gonna go first this week since we're talking about it. I'm gonna file this under what? This article comes from Science Daily. It was published on February 3rd. The title is, "Do Women Talk More Than Men? It Might Depend on Their Age." The stereotype that women are much more talkative than men is pervasive across many cultures, but a widely reported study by University of Arizona researchers in 2007 refuted the claim. finding that men and women speak roughly the same number of words per day, around 16,000. However,
okay.
Go ahead, Devon.
I was going to say a number of words maybe, but the content of those words.
Oh, they are biting. They are threatening. Just ask Ben's wife.
Well, I think that the clarification here is like what this is about, because I'm always talking about I'm the house spouse,
feelings?
right? Like my feelings. I'm always talking about my feelings, and she's like, you don't need to be talking about this. Like it's just accept them and move on.
Like, we get it. You're emo.
Yeah, right. Her nickname that my brother gave her a nickname one time. Her call sign is Painkiller.
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 That's perfect.
Right?
Yeah. Devon, what was yours in law school?
Soul Crusher.
Soul Crusher. Yeah.
And Ben, what's your nickname?
The boy with feelings, maybe?
Feeling boy.
Feeling boy. So like I'm it's curious to see that 16,000 words per day on average, kind of typical human adult, probably based on different cultures, but like I think the content of those number of words it would be a valid continued study. Please continue, Stephen.
Yeah, well, so that 16,000 words, that came from the researchers in 2007. But a new, larger follow-up to that study paints a more nuanced picture, suggesting that women may be the chattier gender, but only during a certain period of life. Researchers found that women between the ages of 25 and 65...
Yeah, only while their husbands are alive.
Only if they're giving them pity.
Jesus. Researchers found that women between the ages of 25 and 65, the life stages of early and middle adulthood, spoke an average of about 3,000 more words per day than their male counterparts. Significant gender differences did not appear in the study's other age groups: adolescence, 10 to 17, emerging adulthood, 18 to 24, and older adulthood, 65 and up. The researchers also discovered that people in general might be becoming less talkative, a finding they suspect is linked to an increasing reliance on digital communication. Their findings are published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. So the 2007 study, when you read about it, it's not the best. They collected data from 500 male and female study participants who wore a portable recording device dubbed the ear, which, come on, electronically activated recorder that turns on at random intervals to capture snippets of daily conversations. But the study also invited criticisms due to its limitations. Its participants were almost entirely college-aged, and most lived in the same city. You guessed it, Austin, Texas. So, like, that is not a good study. Like, we can all agree. That's very, very limited.
Well, and that's a problem with a lot of studies. A lot of studies, especially like sociology or psychology studies, are usually done on college students because they're done at universities, and college students are available and willing to do these things. And so you have a very biased selection group.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that a lot of studies get criticized for, which is legitimate because, that doesn't represent everybody in the world.
Definitely. So 18 years later, they did a different study. So they analyzed 360,000 ear recordings from 22 separate studies conducted in 4 countries with participants ranging in age from 10 to 94. The study included 2,197 individuals, 4 times as many as the original study. So that's better. That's better. Let's see. So a significant gender difference only emerged for one age group, those 25 to 64, an age range that had been missing in the original study of college students. While women in the early to middle adulthood age spoke 21,845 words a day on average, men spoke 18,570. The researchers don't know for sure why women are the more talkative gender during the near 40-year stretch between 25 and 64, but they say one possibility is that those tend to be the child-rearing years, and women, who often assume the role of primary caregiver, might be speaking more than men to their children during that time. That feels very weak to me. Very weak and outdated idea, but okay.
I mean, I don't know. I wonder what my, like, as the primary caregiver for a child throughout most of the day here, like, whether or not that would be inverted.
I'm curious,
like, where it's not along gender, but rather around familial and societal roles.
Yeah, there could be a change, a difference there. I would be curious to see how many words are spoken between you and your son versus your wife at work, and see which numbers are bigger for those times. Because I mean, who knows?
Hold the bleeding.
Yeah. Scoop
I
out
need the meds right now. Stat.
A lot of stats. So many stats.
Your feelings don't care. There's someone bleeding on the table.
Wait, so how did they record it the second time? I know you talked about the recorder being like intermittently on the first time. How did they do it the second time?
So there were more ear recordings. So they were recorded the same way, but it was from different studies in a lot of different countries. So it was kind of a meta deal.
Oh, yeah, I was just like, because it's so context dependent. And like, what is your job? Is it a job that requires you to talk a lot or not? Like,
well, that's the whole deal, is that it's recording all the time and just, or not recording, it's on you all the time and just records intermittently. So to get just like a sample size throughout the day of how much you're talking.
But I'm saying you have to control for all variables. So you need like people who have the same job, or you need to only record them during social situations so it's not dependent on their job. And if it seems like it's just as flawed. Like, it's just first of all, it's a really weird thing to study.
Okay.
I mean, I love science, studying random things and being like, okay, well, we didn't know this. I mean, it's not going to lead to any huge discoveries that are going to change our civilization, but it's cool to know why things are the way they are, and that could be anything. But really, we're like, do women talk more? It's like, I want to be able to justify my sexism. So when I say women are always squawking away, I want to have scientific proof to back this up.
Oh, boy.
And if you really want to do that, then okay, well, then record what they say, what everybody says. And if you want to know, like, oh, is it because of childbearing? Well, look at the words. Like, aren't we recording the words themselves? Like, I guess if you have the time, then look at what they're saying. Like, we don't have to just speculate that they were talking to kids or whatever. Or are we saying they talk more, not necessarily to kids, but because of their of childbearing age, they're more likely to talk more, because when they do have kids, they're going to talk more to their kids and teach them language. Like, is it
Right.
Not necessarily, it's like, what is it? Is it like, what is this study?
What is this? So what I took away from this is two things. One, the kind of offshoot analysis was that, and I hadn't gotten to this point in the article yet, but that we as in both men and women, are speaking about 300 words less on average per year. Like, it's going down. We're just, as a group, talking less. So that's kind of interesting, if has to do with social media or just texting and that kind of stuff. Also the other bit is, the stereotype of women talking more or being more chatty, or however you want to put it, what is the evolutionary reason for that? Or vice versa, why are men not talking as much? Right? Are women talking the normal amount and men are being extra quiet for some reason? Which way is it? And why is it that way? Why is it just accepted?
They can't get a word in edgewise.
Oh, Devon. Boo, Devon.
You just said women talk more.
No, there's a study. I can say
by
it.
Research.
Yeah, the study says so. No, I'm curious, because and this is something specific for me, being as the stay-at-home dad, and someone who had to go to the park with the kids, and typically there were a lot of moms there. There were some dads there as well, but typically it's a lot of moms, and the moms would talk. The dads did not talk. It was just, that's just how it was. That's just how it is. And so I'm just curious about, like, if the social reasonings behind it. And it could just be that is because the in the hunter-gatherer days, the men were out hunting and the women were back at the tribe. And when we say talking, I mean, this is an exchange of information and ideas and teachings, right? Is it what's going on here? I want to see more studies on this stuff, and not just because, oh, the women talk more. Like, what are the reasons behind it? I'm curious about that kind of stuff, and I was hoping this article would go into that, and it does not. So, yeah, this study seems like the original study just seemed like, hey, let's give some things to college people. Let's find out who's talking more. And now it's like, no, let's dig in here. Why is this how it is? And I'm more curious in that. Anyways, that's about it for my future or now. It seems like it's a now. So we'll see what happens.
We'll find out, I guess.
More on this as it develops. Maybe we'll have Renee back on and she can tell us what it's like to be a woman. Because I don't know.
I won't make any jokes about having a woman on the podcast and then we not having any ability to speak.
I mean, okay, so like I think it's probably important.
I won't do that. I won't make any jokes about how if we have a woman on the podcast, then no, kidding.
Devon, stop talking.
Well, yeah. given the amount of privilege that we have, right? Like it's the idea that I think that a large part of what my wife is trying to get at is that maybe if we accept a little bit of the fact that our feelings as white cisgendered middle-aged males are not cared about by the universe, maybe we will sort of receive a little glimpse of how a lot of other marginalized groups feel.
Yeah, I agree with your wife. Stop it with all the feelings. Nobody cares. I get what she's saying.
I can't stop the feelings, but how important they are outside of my own meat, my own brain meat is my own emotional state is limited, right? Like, yes. What use are they?
None.
Yeah.
Negative.
So y'all.
I'll just say the universe doesn't care about you regardless of sex, gender, ethical, or racial background, anything. The universe doesn't care.
No.
True.
Nobody cares.
True. But perhaps the people who think that it does are more proportionately the white cisgendered male podcast owners.
You can't own a podcast, white man. It's for everyone. Don't try to colonize our podcast. Get out of here.
Join our Patreon.
Yeah, patreon.com/science-faction-podcast. What else we have here? Ben, more Ben talking. Go ahead, Ben. What else you got here for us today?
Is this a wild ramble? Yep.
Oh boy.
Hey, y'all. I'd like to talk a little bit about the philosophy of computers and specifically of the metaphor of the desktop in terms of our computer graphical user interface. Did you all know that the idea behind the desktop metaphor for like having files and documents and folders and our entire desktop, that was created in 1968 from DNLS and made popular by the Xerox PARC labs back in the 1970s. And that has been the basic idea of how we interact with computers since then.
However, hold on. What is DNLS? What is that?
What is DNLS? Okay, so if we look at the Wikipedia article of the history of the graphical user interface, DNLS. So NLS was what was called the online system that was created in the 1960s from the Douglas Engelbert's Augmentation of Human Intellect project at the Augmentation Research Center at SRI International in Menlo Park, California.
Oh, forget I asked. Jeez.
Which is why I didn't go into it, Stephen. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are your feelings hurt? Would you like to talk about it? Nobody cares.
Yes, you know what? Let's
Nobody
derail
cares
this
about your
podcast.
feelings, Ben.
As we were reading this week's book or thing for book club, Burning Chrome by William Gibson, a large part of it, I was struck by how the interactions with the computer systems happen in that book and how different it is from how we interact with computer systems today and how I've interacted with computer systems my entire life.
It is different.
And right, it's very different. And I thought to myself, well, gosh, why? Why is that? And so I went on a bit of an interesting dive.
You went on a journey, didn't you?
I went on a journey, y'all. And I'm not going to go like all the way into it, but I'd like to kind of point at a few different things that that may be interesting for the listeners of this podcast and maybe even the other podcast hosts. There is a YouTube series called Liber Indigo, in which I'll have a link to the first video in the series, which it's called the Metaphysical Prisoners of the Desktop. And the entire idea here that's posited from this 15-minute video and the videos after it by Kirkwood is that the desktop metaphor, it has, oh gosh, how can I put this? It has been set up because that was one of the easiest ways to get buy-in on desktop interfaces from people, was to say, hey, imagine that this is just for the office, right? The modern office. We have filing systems and we have cabinets and drawers and desktops where our stuff is on.
But literal top of the desk.
Right. Yeah. However, that's not like the only way that a computer system can be run. And on top of that, it may be actually an outmoded one which the entire concept of it is based upon capitalism.
What?
Which, well, okay, think about it. If you've got an entire computer system that's based upon the metaphors of an office where one does things that make money.
Yes.
Then what about affordances for getting other things done in life? At that point, everything that your interaction with the computer is based upon systems, like on a foundational level, that are set to mimic things in real life that are transactions that make money.
All right.
So
fair enough.
Of what use would there be to have a computer system that is represented in a way like what you see in William Gibson's Burning Chrome? There is no use for that because it's not a way to make money.
So are you telling me that this Windows PC that I'm staring at right now as we're recording this podcast is the way it is because of rich old white men?
Yeah. Yes.
What's with these rich old white men?
Well,
right.
What's the alternative? I'm sorry. I'm not trying
what
to be
would
difficult.
be an alternative?
I honestly don't understand what's the point of what you're saying?
The point is that there are other ways of doing things. And in fact,
okay, but I mean, like from the beginning, like when desktop computers were developed and marketed, was there an alternative that was considered and they said no because of this? Or like, is it just because nowadays are we trying to call it something different? Are we trying to put the towers in a different room so they're not on our desk or near our desk?
No, sorry. Let's back up. Maybe I'll answer one of your questions. There are other operating systems that do not use the desktop model. Every time that you start up an Xbox, a PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, you're greeted with a graphical user interface that is not based upon folders necessarily or documents or other things, because its purpose is to get you into video games.
Okay.
In a similar way, the iOS and iPadOS and other graphical user interfaces for phones actually did, like especially iOS, did away with the document model and went with an application model. It said, hey, what task do you want to have happen? Here's an application that does that task, and documents and a lot of the and folders and that sort of stuff is secondary. In fact, a lot of people argued, hey, I can't get work done with my phone in using it this way. So Apple made an affordance by creating a Files app that gives you access to a file system, but it is not the foundation for the operating system. It's just an app.
Okay, so we're talking about the operating system, and I must have missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about, we don't care that it's the physical desk or tower. Like a laptop would apply to the same thing you're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the Windows system, the desktop environment.
The virtual desktop being modeled
Okay.
after the physical desktop of the 1950s desk with files sitting on it.
Yes,
That kind of
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
And so it got me really thinking a lot about, well, when have we had computer systems that did not operate on that model? An interesting version of that, I mean, other than the examples I just gave, one that did not succeed whatsoever was Microsoft's Bob that came out in the 1990s, which was essentially an image of a room that had a little dog running around it and different skeuomorphic items within that room that would allow you to have access to certain things. So there was a cuckoo clock on the wall. That's where you get your time. There was, so like that didn't, that did not expand beyond that. Like it failed as a metaphor. But this idea that, much like in Burning Chrome, when the characters are jacking into construct matrices and they're viewing the security systems through ICE and through like all this terminology that suggests a visual that is not what our computer systems look like. Or when you watch Jurassic Park and the little girl says, "This is the Linux system or Unix system. I know this," and she sees a bunch of buildings in a three-dimensional sort of thing, and she's flying down the alleyways in between these cores of the computer system. Those are affordances that are very different than how computing looks like right now, and perhaps we have the opportunity to re-examine them and find other ways where computers maybe have interaction models that aren't based on what we've already seen. Perhaps it's time to break down those sort of things and maybe just kind of like think about it and look around, see what other models you can use to interact with the cyber world around us. That's really exciting to me.
You just look at what has bubbled to the top, like the app structure on our phones. People are used to that now. Like the way that I use my PC, like my desktop is completely clear. Like I don't keep stuff cluttered around on there. I used to. I don't anymore. Kind of this minimalization thing going on, where I do just have like a selection of apps, if you will, on my taskbar at the bottom. So I like that model of like just press the button and do the thing. I don't need to dive into the file system to look at, how this thing is running.
Yeah.
It just run. That's fine.
Right.
So
right.
what,
Like, is the computer using you, or are you using the computer?
Oh, don't say that.
Why not? It's a very important thing.
How is the computer?
Maybe I want to be used. Okay, you ever think about that?
Right. Maybe you do. So for example, recently, just this week, I reinstalled Windows 11 on my son's Steam Deck, and because he changed his password and forgot to write it down, and he couldn't get into his system. So all right, let's reinstall the OS. And we get to the default stock operating system, and I notice in the lower left-hand corner there's an icon that has the current weather conditions.
Yep.
And like as a great computer user, Flint looked at it, moved his mouse over it, clicked on it, and all of a sudden half of the screen was taken up with news article after news article with images of Donald J. Trump's face.
Yeah, that's not a great feature, Windows.
Right? Well, now, however you feel about that, whether you feel like I do, where it's like, that is a little triggering, because I do remember the millions of Americans that died on his watch in the during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to
like,
look at pictures of felons randomly. No, thank you.
Not a big fan, right? However, whether you agree with that or don't agree with it, or it is a way that was ad space that was sold by Microsoft to, to these organizations.
It feels
and
dishonest.
Whether or not they have an ethic, whether they have an ethical prerogative to serve us those things or not serve us those things, like it or not, that's the current milieu and the current culture and the current attention, the zeitgeist of right now. And if you want to be plugged into that, that's a choice you're making. But some people don't see it as a choice when it's offered as a one-click thing from your desktop to all of that, to a curated list of information like that, that could be not thinking about your mental health or really care about your mental health.
Yeah, when I first installed Windows 11 and I saw that, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Look at that! They got the weather right there." And then I put my mouse over it, and the thing slides out, and it's like, "Here's all the news that you didn't ask for." Immediately, I was like, "I was just tricked. I wanted to see the weather, and now you're showing me things I don't want to see. How do I turn this off?" There's no easy way to turn it off.
And now imagine how you must feel if you purchased a licensed copy of this operating system. You purchased the permission to be served all of that curated content, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people, because of what they're familiar with in the desktop model and in a lot of different things, that is what people agree to and pay for, because they don't see another option. Maybe now's a great time to not just consider what other options could be in the future, but also consider the options that exist right now.
Do you have any suggested options, Ben?
Well, okay, so at any time, I'd say, like, hey, if you've got a little bit of time, you're willing to learn something, you've got a growth mindset, take a look at what's going on in Linux at the open source community and what they're doing, and whether or not that could get you pretty far. It doesn't take much to, like, depending on your familiarity with systems, it may not take much for you to find something that gets you where you need to go, but doesn't have those challenges.
This kind of begs a much larger question of, do we even need desktops anymore? As a generic thing.
Yeah. Right. And that was something that, like, a few years ago, I was shocked when my wife was like, "I don't really need a computer. I haven't touched one from personal use for a very long time. I've got my phone. It is my lifeline to everything a computer used to be."
I mean, I get it for, like, being a student. Like, if you need to research, you need to write papers and that kind of thing, you need a future typewriter, which is what a computer could be. But beyond that, it's a very niche thing. Like, if you are studying a specific technological thing that you need to compute things, sure. If you want to play games, that's fine. But beyond a couple of, like, those niche things now, your phone can do it. Like, we all have a computer in our pockets that I want to look up a thing. You can look up a thing. I want to watch a thing. You can watch a thing. I want to write a thing. You can write it's all in your pocket now. So why do you need this big device in general? Like, I remember us being younger, it was like, in our formative years, as technology was changing, before the phone in the pocket revolution, everyone kind of needed a computer to access things and all that. And now that's just kind of gone away, which is nice. It can be nice.
It kind of depends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what is a computer? Would you consider, like, any electronic means for accessing network content.
Wait, haven't we
Would
covered
that
this?
be a computer?
Haven't we covered this on the podcast? Isn't a computer a black woman that works at NASA?
That's very true. That's very true.
I don't need one of those in my home. They can live at their own home. Thank you.
So, like you mentioned, are there any other options for handling this metaphor? And Jason Yuan is a interface designer that has come up with what he calls a speculative reimagining of the operating system called Mercury OS. And there's a website, mercuryos.com, where he kind of outlines sort of an idea of how another computer interface could be, as what he calls a fluid experience driven by human intent. And it does entirely away with the document and
File system
and other
and all that stuff.
Yeah, file system metaphor. And instead it's about like human intent. What do you got going on today? What has recently happened? What happened yesterday? What are you going to do next? Like, those questions are things that systems, can be put in place in order to more intelligently handle that sort of thing, and also present the information you want to see and the information you need to see in like within a separate context. So perhaps like a module will pop up that's like, oh, hey, here's an email that just came out, and it's not in your email app. It's just part of the milieu of things that are happening today and things that can be planned for the future.
That's interesting. Like I'm looking at the website now. Like I get it. Instead of waiting for the computer to serve you information, you go to the computer and you say, "This is what I'm doing," and then it just does it. Like that's
right.
That's how I'm seeing this.
And so like that idea can be hand in hand. This is not necessarily something talked about on the website, but it can be hand in hand with large language models. You look at how the advances that are being made and the attention that's being put on digital assistants like Siri and Alexa and Goober, Hey Google, that like
Goober. Okay.
That is one computing model that is being actively developed as well, right? The ability to access a computer in other ways, and the accessibility of it that does not require necessarily a screen or a keyboard and mouse, that it can be interacted with just from a dialogue. Yeah. So like these things are happening. There's a lot of thought and care being put into them, and we could be part of that conversation. You can have that. Keep an eye out. It's an exciting space.
Okay, here's how we're gonna test this. You ready?
Sure.
Devon, does this excite you at all?
No.
Okay.
All right.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that something like that will probably happen eventually, but I don't care. I mean, I'm used to the system I have, and I don't see how for my particular job it could really be any different. But I'm basically doing a job where the computer is simulating actual paperwork and files and things. So you'd have to remake like the court system I work within in order to remake my desktop.
That gets to the kind of central thesis of this, which is back to the beginning, like the entire metaphor is based upon a corporate office in order to get corporate work done. Whereas the metaphors for the operating systems we're using on iOS are not based on that. And they allow you to accomplish different things.
So is it mostly just for like recreational purposes?
Or living,
Like if anything non-work related. So like if if what you're talking about happens, you're still imagining when you work, you probably work from home, but when you work, you're still using an operating system that's more like we use now, but probably even more tailored towards your particular business.
Well, okay, so like sometimes the computer interfaces we use from a work purpose are not what you would use for recreational purposes. So for example, 15 years ago when I joined my current company and I learned a lot more about web development, I found that I had to become very familiar with command line interfaces and using terminals and typing out commands that did not involve using a graphic user interface or even that interaction model at all of documents and files necessarily in the way that you expect them. So like, it's not just the corporate environment. I guess what I'm getting at is that like, not all of computing is recreational. Not all of computing is based on making money. But a large part of how we interact with these computer systems is in aid of those things, to the exclusion of other things. And so perhaps we're on, again, I mentioned this is probably going to be rambling because I don't have the answers here, right? But like, these are the fact that, I guess it's like waking up to the fact that decisions were made over the course of the last 40 to 60 years in computing that have led us to a feeling of sameness right now, where it's a relatively mature way that we interact with computers, but it's not the only way. And perhaps it invites a re-examination of how computers live in our lives and our relationship to them, and how to have a meaningful interaction with these systems.
All right, I'm going to cut you off there. We are going to take ourselves a little break. When we come back, we are going to be talking about Burning Chrome. Burning Chrome, the short story within the book Burning Chrome called Burning Chrome by William Gibson. Be sure to read your copy and meet us on the other end. We will be right back.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please go to what is it? Patreon.com/Science Faction Podcast, where you will find something, I don't know, but it's something where you can contribute and help support the podcast.
And we're back.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, the podcast got a little lighter. Ben had some family stuff to deal with, so we are going to deal with it. So I hope everyone who's listening has read Burning Chrome by William Gibson. But we're going to talk about it next week now, because I know Ben had some cool stuff he wanted to talk about. I want to talk about a bunch, and Devon needed more time. Right, Devon?
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. I have a question for you about it.
Okay.
Did you get it on Audible? You said it was available on Audible.
Yeah.
Did you get like the whole book?
Yes.
Okay, because I couldn't find just the short story on Audible.
No, it was the whole book. Yeah.
I did find on YouTube the whole audiobook.
Okay.
I don't know if it was an old recording or something, because it sounds kind of dated. My question is, since you have access to the entire book on audio, I need to know the timestamp for where that story starts.
Oh yeah,
we can talk about that later.
And it's at the end too. So yeah. Something of note within that Burning Chrome book of short stories, Burning Chrome is one of them. Another one is Johnny Mnemonic, which which is it's a William Gibson story, and it's also a Keanu Reeves movie, which is really interesting.
And Burn Your Face Upon the Chrome is a lyric from a Metallica song.
That tracks 100%. Since Ben's not here, hey, thank you, patrons. Thank you, Renee and Josh. You guys are awesome.
You know who you are.
You know who you are, both of you. If you want to become a patron, patreon.com/Science Faction Podcast. Now, since we are diverting and we're not doing book club, next week we will talk Burning Chrome. The week after that, if you want to get ahead, Millennium by J.G. Ballard was chosen. We'll talk about that more next week. Devon, last week you were here and we did something very specific. What was it?
I thought we weren't going to talk about that, but
no, the other thing, the game.
Oh, we played an RPG. We played Mothership, which we talked about a little bit in the last episode because we were preparing to play for it.
Yeah, and now we have. Yeah, so we played Mothership. Mothership RPG. It's from Tuesday Night Games. I highly recommend it, especially if you like the movie Alien. because the RPG, which made like millions on Kickstarter, it was one of those deals, and it is vastly supported with modules and fan content and all this stuff. But it is a sci-fi horror RPG. So we got together. It was you, it was Ben, and our friend, or my friend really, and I introduced him to you guys, Dave. Hi, Dave. Dave, I don't know. Dave sometimes listens. David? Dave. I don't know which one he prefers. I should ask him. We played. So I set up this game, and you guys, you three, were all players. Tell us about your experience with Mothership.
It was fun. It was like you said. It's the module we played was very much like Alien. There's a rather than going to a planet though, there's a distress call from a ship, and we get instructions from the company to go check it out. There's certainly a alien presence or some kind of containment leak that's very mysterious, and we pretty early came into contact with what appeared to be like an alien type thing, although it was like a human who had, you know, been morphed into an alien type thing. And
yeah.
So we searched the ship to find out clues, discover the story, and then have to kind of make a decision if we're going to destroy the ship and try to destroy the alien presence so it can't harm anybody else, or follow the instructions from the company and bring it back. So we've got our characters, and I was like the kind of the generic military officer in charge of the operation, and then Ben was a scientist. Sorry, you probably just heard my son come in.
Can we play Among Us?
Maybe later.
Okay.
You want to play some Mario?
Yeah.
Dave was the teamster,
yeah,
like the engineer technician guy. Rusty. His name was Rusty.
Yeah, and so yeah, it kind of plays out like that, and get infected, have to find a cure, have to take care of the alien menace, and yeah, it was fun.
Okay, it was fun. Good. I'm glad it was fun. The thing about Mothership is it's rules light. So when you guys made your characters, there were some roles for like stats and stuff, but when it came to the actual like characterization, it's only like your imagination and a trinket and a patch. Do you remember what trinket and patch you had for your character?
Oh man, it said plays nice with others.
Oh, you had like a skull, like a weird alien skull thing was your trinket.
My trinket was like a 3-eyed horned alien skull, yeah.
Yeah. So when you make your characters, yeah, you roll some stats, but then there's like a D100 roll you make on trinkets and on patches. And you use that plus whatever your class is, and like how we said before, scientist, military, teamster, or android was the other one. If we had another player, they would probably have been the android just to have a full rounded out deal. But besides that, that coupled with the trinket and the patch is supposed to give you like a direction for your character to then just kind of play out. Whereas other games like the D&D that we've played, there's a lot with like your species and your class and your background. Like those are all things that you pull together to create this character. And this game was a lot more freestyle. So I thought it was really the choice that your character made, through you, of course, to jettison this alien artifact into a sun. Can you talk a little bit about your decision-making process there?
All right, so my character, I had a character arc for my character. He was military. He was kind of like the young, idealistic, somewhat maybe brainwashed with patriotism to be gung-ho and wants to save people, thinks the government is doing good. And the backstory for why he was on the ship is because even though it's a privately owned ship, the government contracts out people to basically kind of be security. I forgot exactly what the story was. came up with that, but
That sounds right. That sounds familiar.
it's a world where corporations kind of control everything anyway. But anyway, that's his character. Had a backstory like with the skull of like saving his sister from some kind of beast that's on their farm, and that's the three-eyed skull thing. So, and then when they get the instructions to take the alien presence back, yet you find out that how evil it is and how dangerous it is, and everybody on the ship, like all the logs and things, are like, no, destroy it, it's too dangerous. So my character's arc was that he realizes, the company and the government doesn't have their best interests at heart, but I play along with wanting to get the artifact back on our ship, and then tell everybody else to be like, okay, we'll go into cryo sleep. I'll set the coordinates to get back to whatever. And we even set up the stasis field for the artifact in one of the cargo bays.
Yeah.
Which I made sure had a cargo bay door. So when everybody's in cryo sleep, I jettison it. I set a course near a star, whatever star is closest to, or in the system we're in.
Yeah.
And then jettison it to destroy it in a star. There was we talked about, because there was an android on board, which was a NPC, and it was
a company-owned android that had the company's interest in it, kind of like Ash, of course, from Alien.
Basically, and like trying to stop me. Although that was, since this wasn't really part of the game, it was kind of just like the epilogue, and so I did that, and then I ended up getting like arrested. So doing that on my own without involving other characters. The other characters are free from liability because they didn't make that choice. Although I assume they would be mad at me because they probably were gonna get a big bonus for this. And
that alien artifact was worth billions of credits.
Yeah,
billions.
So that was kind of, and then I get arrested when we get back. And if there was going to be another story, we could deal with either the trial or escaping from prison or something. But
yeah. So what was your overall takeaway of this game? Was this something that it's very different from D&D? Like, I know that you've played D&D. I know we've played Cypher System, and now you've played Mothership. They're all very different game systems. Is there one that you prefer over the others, or are they all just kind of like the same-ish? It's just a game. Roll some dice. What do you think?
Prefer. I'm trying to think. Like, yeah, I kind of just take them on their own. Like, if you play a different board game or something, it's like, these are the rules for this board game. Like, I don't really necessarily compare the rules to the rules of other games. I don't know. I think I do like a little bit more structure.
Okay.
Just to be working within the bounds of a bit more rules to try to figure things out. But maybe that's because I need to be more creative with what I have characters do, considering in this kind of system you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no like skill list. So like in some games it's like you roll some stats, then you have a list of skills or things that you are good at. And so you kind of can limit yourself to be like, okay, can I use this skill, one of these skills, to solve the problem that's in front of me? Whereas Mothership is more like, pretend it's real life. What would you do? And then you say what you want to do, and then the warden or the GM, the person running the game, can kind of direct you on what you need to roll in order to try to accomplish that. So it is more free form, and there can be that could be positive or negative. It can feel like overwhelming because you have all the choice, or it can feel underwhelming because like, what do I do? What does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So it feels like a lot of newer gamers, I would say, or maybe less experienced gamers, like more direction, because you are thrown into these games of like, you can do whatever you want. What are you going to do? And it's like, I don't know. Right. But for people who have been playing, who are very experienced, look at their character sheet, can almost immediately embody who they feel this character is and start acting as them, playing that role. And so a system with less rules feels better because you just start playing pretend, you just go for it. And so there's different strokes for different folks. Is that a thing people say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still liked it. I would like to try a different scenario, one where, because that was kind of like maybe an introduction where it's a pretty straightforward type thing, like see something that maybe has a bit more nuance.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And what's beautiful about Mothership is the variety of modules that are out there, and I have several of them. Like one of them that I have, I think it's called the Desert Moon of Karth. It has uh, a whole planet that to explore essentially. But the way that it's set up is once you land, you're not allowed to leave. And the people who are there were never allowed to leave. So like you have that right away, like, okay, one, what do I do to leave? Two, what's going on here? And there's a town and there's a mine and there's like a cult and there's some alien like there's all this stuff to explore. And it's got like, I would say like a good 4 or 5 sessions worth of play just there, you know, being who your characters are, interacting with the world. And that's one module. And I have a lot. One of them is actually like, oh shoot, it's not. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's essentially Die Hard. Like, it's dying or hard. It's something hard light station. Dying hard and hard light station. So it's got some like play on words, but it is. There's lots of vents to crawl through. There's the evil Nakatomi Corporation. Like it goes hard into like using character names and all that stuff, which can be a lot of fun. And then there are other really simple modules where it is just like one sheet of paper. It's like a trifold, like a pamphlet. And there's a really famous one called The Haunting of Epsilon 14. And that is like a first game for a lot of people. Which maybe I should have run that one for you guys instead. But anyway, whatever, it's fine. Because the one that we ran, I made up along with ChatGPT. So like I knew that this was going to be a first, the first time being exposed to this game for like everyone playing and even me as running the game. So I did make it a little generic and a little like, let's try a little bit of everything and just see where the game goes, see where you guys go. Like there was a whole swath that you guys didn't even touch. There's a lot more to discover. It was fun to write. It was fun to see the decisions you guys were making. And it was fun when you guys failed and had to roll your panic checks to see what would happen. Because that was the big thing with the game is it's really hard to accomplish something. You're only supposed to roll if it's like a time pressure or there's like a big consequence of failure. You don't roll on every little thing. So a lot of times we would just narrate. I would narrate what happened. But when you did have to make a roll, these rolls are hard. And so every time you fail, you gain stress, and then certain things can happen. You have to roll a panic check to see if you panic. And when you guys found that prototype laser, I was like, oh, now we're gonna get somewhere. And it got fired a few times. It carved some chunks off of some alien worms. So it was it was a good time. I had a lot of fun running it.
Cool. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, and you guys were survived more than I thought you would. And maybe I needed to throw more aliens at you. We'll see what happens next time.
Maybe got some lucky rolls, but yeah,
there were some lucky rolls. And there was also like as the person running the game and seeing how long the game was going and looking into Ben's eyes and seeing how tired he looked, like combat can slow a game down sometimes. So we were getting towards the end of the session where more things probably should have attacked you. And I just didn't have that happen because we had already been playing for like 5 hours. And I was like, I don't want this to go 3 extra hours. Maybe we just wrap this up within an hour. And so instead of having more little attacks, I gave a couple of big attacks that you guys dealt with very quickly and in fun ways, like straight running away and then having a really good roll on closing the door behind you that then cut the thing in half. I was like, that was a cool moment. That's one moment that really stands out to me.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. Anyways, Mothership, we had a great time with that. I had a great time with it. Did you have a great time with it or just an okay time?
Yeah, I did. I'd play it again.
Awesome. And everyone survived. So a hallmark of the Mothership character sheet is there's a little spot on it that says high score. And every time your character survives, you put another tick mark there, and you all survived. The average Mothership character will last for only 4 sessions. So we've got 3 more sessions, and then we start killing people, is what I say. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. Like I said, Ben had a family thing going on, so he had to leave. So next week, we will definitely be talking about Burning Chrome by William Gibson. Devon will figure out a way to listen or read this thing so we can all 3 of us talk about it. Yeah. So, Devon.
Yes.
Do you have any final thoughts?
I do not.
Oh, boy.
Do you?
I don't. Like, this is one of those things where, like, in real life, something happens, like, oh, that'd be a perfect, like, last words or final thoughts. I got to remember that. Like, oh, there's no way I'll forget that. And then, like, right now, total blank. So, good night, everybody.
This has been the Science Faction Podcast. Tweet to the host at SciFact Podcast. Email them at sciencefactionpodcast@gmail.com and visit sciencefactionpodcast.com for more episodes.